After 8 years, we have a brand new Hunger Games film, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So let's talk about it. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, as well as the Hunger Games franchise films and books in general. As this is based off of a book, you can listen to the book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, for free if you sign up for a free trial of Audible at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. I am a big fan of Audible, and my wife is as well. She spent the last week listening to this book, prepping to see the movie, but they have all of the Hunger Games books on there, and if you sign up for a free trial, you can get any of the Hunger Games books for free at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. And let's get started with the good. And I'll kick things off by saying this is a movie I wasn't particularly excited about until a couple weeks back when I started rewatching the Hunger Games movies, and it kind of reminded me that how interesting this lore and mythology is, and that there's a lot more layers and complexity to everything going on than just the thrill and spectacle of the Hunger Games themselves. And watching this movie, it just gives you a new perspective on everything for a couple of obvious reasons. First one, the movie is set 64 years before the events of the first Hunger Games book and movie. And so you're seeing this primitive early version of the Hunger Games, and they found some really nice ways to capture that. The movie, the set design, the aesthetic has this like 1930s, 40s retro feel to it while still being like futuristic in other senses. And so it just has this otherworldly quality to it. Even in the camera lenses that they're using, they use a lot of wide angle lenses in these shots that just kind of give it this distinct look to things. Like the TV sets and stuff have kind of this bendy, smooth, tubular look to them. And then they use this wide angle lens for a lot of the shots that provides a similar kind of bendy vibe to the shots and as they pan. And I just appreciated the way that they made it feel like it's in the past while still being stylized. But the capital isn't the capital that we saw in the Hunger Games that is highly evolved, sophisticated. This is set not long after the war. There's still struggle and destruction everywhere, and that kind of flavors the entire film, how fresh the wounds are from the war, from the rebellion that led to the creation of the Hunger Games. And along those exact same lines, the other obvious reason that this movie just feels very different while having a lot of the similar elements is that it's primarily told from the perspective of Snow, a person raised in the capital who during his childhood, the rebellion happened, the war happened, and his formative years, teenage years, were the first 10 Hunger Games, and we're seeing all of this from there. How is he affected by this rebellion? How does he perceive those people? And kind of went into it a little bit nervous that it would, do the Cruella treatment and teach us that, in fact, Snow is just this misunderstood outcast. He's the real victim that led him to be the tyrant that we know and love and hate. But it doesn't really do that. Instead, it shows you his perspective, but it never really presents him as the good guy or even a good guy. It just presents him as a human that has emotions and some good, some bad, but it allows him to have good qualities whilst never ignoring the fact that this is a guy with darkness inside of him that pops out even very early on. Another nice detail in here is while we do get the 10th Hunger Games in this movie, it doesn't really feel like a retread at all, both because we're seeing it from the perspective of young Snow, but because it's so radically different. Instead of having this, gigantic dome where people are off in these woods and all the things that come along with that, with the sophistication and evolution that happens in the Hunger Games original series, it's much more basic and simple of like just kids in this stadium. Like it's much smaller and more compact. to a degree to where, like, when it first started off, it was like, what is this thing going to last for 2 minutes? How's this going to work? And then you realize, oh, it's the full stadium, so it's almost like this game of hide and seek with weapons, and it worked much better and had kind of a freshness to it that I wasn't expecting. Even kind of in the way that they use the drop-in items where people can send things in. It's different. It provides some opportunities that weren't there before. So, while still delivering a Hunger Games, still going back to Panem, still having someone selected, someone is trained, someone is in the battle, but it's told from a different perspective at a different point in time, and it's handled so differently here that it doesn't feel like a rehash, despite if you did a one-paragraph synopsis, it could look very similar for the first 2/3 of this film. Other things to talk about in here, some of our performances. Our lead guy, Tom Blythe as Snow. I don't believe I've seen him in anything else before, but he absolutely is able to carry the film. It doesn't feel like he's out of his league. He does a nice job of being able to make a character that you can sympathize with while never cheating, never making him the good guy, never really doing that, but making him just human enough and having this calculating nature to him. Other gigantic standout in here is Jason Schwartzman. Fantastic as what's the last name of this family? The Flickerman. So I guess the great-grandson, whatever he is, of Stanley Tucci's character from the original set of films. This is just perfect casting. Just they pulled it off. Like, I think he's funnier. He's better. He's just as like slimy and gross, but he's funnier in a way that it's like, wow, how did you find someone that is able to look so similar, but obviously look different, have that same announcer vibe, and just bring this whole other thing to it? It's like that it was such great casting. You have Rachel Ziegler in here, who, you know, of course, enemy number one of YouTube and the online conversation. She's a very different character from Katniss. And she's not designed the way that Katniss is this reluctant hero that has a strong moral compass. Very different. She's more of an overt showman. She's a singer. In fact, there's a lot more musical numbers in this film than I was expecting. The songbird in the title is quite literal. There's a lot of music in this movie. But like, she is a showman. She's conniving and manipulative herself. And so not really competing with Katniss because they're such different characters. But and maybe in some sense, her current reputation of the conversation almost kind of helps that, of having this character that has her own motives in her actions and how she's using people and trying to survive kind of everything going on in the story. Another one, really everyone's quite good, but like Peter Dinklage, a lot of it, he's doing his regular Peter Dinklage thing, but he gets some scenes towards the end where you really start to like get why he's doing what he's doing, what's driving his actions starts to pop. Viola Davis plays just this utterly like insane character, which is like a lot of fun to watch. An actress of her caliber just going for it and just, you know, chewing up every scene. I was actually really surprised by just how much I enjoyed the first 2/3 of this film and how they managed to deliver all the Hunger Games stuff that I wanted, but with such a different vibe, a different perspective, but without undermining who Snow is. But it's a bit of an odd film with the way that it's structured. So let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. And the big thing I'll say right here is just a recommendation. If you're unfamiliar with the Hunger Games franchise, even though this is a prequel, I would say that this is not the best on-ramp. I would say definitely watch the movies in release order. Start with the movie The Hunger Games and then watch this as a prequel. I think it works better as giving a different perspective. As for first impressions, your way into this world, first Hunger Games is the way to go. And let's move on to the bad. So back 10-ish years ago, it became very trendy when adapting these YA books into franchises that they would convert the final book into two different movies. They did it with Deathly Hallows, they did it with Breaking Dawn, and they did it with Mockingjay. And largely, that was received with pretty mixed reception because it tended to be that the first one just felt so much like setup and the back one felt so much like payoff, and it probably would have been better to just make one really long final movie. This movie is 2 hours and 40 minutes long, so they took a long book and they made it into one long movie. And I would say this is an example where it would have been better to split it in two. When you watch the movie, you will know exactly where the split should be, and you know exactly why the split should be there. The film, as it is released, is in 3 parts, where it starts off and it says part 1, The Mentor, and then part 3, Peacekeeper. Like it puts a card on the screen saying part 1. You will get to the end of part 2, and you'll feel like, all right, wow, this feels like the end of the movie. No, there's an hour left in the movie. There's a conflict created at the beginning of the movie that's resolved at the end of part 2. And then part 3 feels like a spin-off sequel. It has its own conflicts, its own journey. It's a direct follow-up. If you're just looking at the character arc for Snow, the arc is played out over these 3 parts smoothly. It makes sense. But it feels like a follow-up. It feels like this is the next thing that happened after this story. It definitely wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good either. And when you build up the tension, release it, and it's like, all right, that's a nice place to end. And then you keep going, and it's not as good. It just feels more stretched out than it probably even is. Other thing to talk about here, while I appreciate telling the story from the perspective of Snow, and it gives us a whole new view of this world, it also means that it's a lot more difficult to root for these characters. Katniss, Peeta, inherently easy to root for. When you have someone volunteer themselves for their younger sister, when you have someone like Peeta that knows he's gonna die, but has so much admiration for this other person, and they're trying to, it's easy to root for them and be on their side. And when our lead character is the future tyrant who's manipulative, calculating, he's in the Capitol and he keeps calling people savages, it's more of a Breaking Bad situation of slowly watching a person take steps down a path that will lead them to their worst version of themselves, but without being as compelling as a Walter White type character. So, and in the specific context of watching children killing each other, also, it's a harder sell than, yeah, this guy's cooking meth to pay for his medical bills. No, we're watching children murder each other for our entertainment while he's calling them savages. It's tough to really fully resonate with something like that. Remember to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about the movie? Have you read the book? What's your familiarity with the series in general? Also, remember that you can get a free audiobook of your choice at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. They do have all the Hunger Games books over there, and I will be ranking the Hunger Games movies this weekend. When you put it all together, it feels like the first 2/3 is really good, maybe great, but then it tacks on a sequel that's not quite as good onto the back half that pulls the whole thing down to just being good. If you're a Hunger Games fan, absolutely go see this movie. And if you're new to the franchise, I would say don't start with this one. Start with the first one and make your way over here. And if you still like them, absolutely check this one out. Overall, it's a B on the entertainment scale, a 7.5 out of 10. And if you're a Hunger Games fan, see it. It absolutely has some structural issues, some things that don't fully work, but it is worth seeing. It is a solid addition to the franchise. And if you're new, if you're don't know the franchise, yeah, don't start right here. It's not the right on-ramp. Check out that Audible free audiobook at the link down below in the description. Come back this weekend for my ranking of the Hunger Games movies and keep talking movies and TV.